Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back. It's brilliant to have you here once again. I'm currently filming from a modest room at the Ibis Budget in Whitechapel, down in London. It's not exactly a glamorous setup, no fancy lights, no flashy overlays, no transitions or polished edits. Just me, a basic tripod, a mic, and my phone camera. But none of that matters because what is important is what's going on up north. More specifically, what's been happening at Celtic. Even while I'm on the road for a few fight-related events down south, I couldn't let the moment pass without talking about the latest developments in Glasgow's green and white half. So for the next while, we're zoning in entirely on Celtic because what we've seen recently is more than worth discussing. No distractions, no fluff, just football. Let's start with the basics. Celtic are sitting pretty at the top of the Scottish Premiership with a commanding 13-point lead. That's after a strong, confident display against Hearts over the A. Our weekend. Now there's a fair bit to unpack from that result, from tactical choices to individual performances, and of course the manager's comments after the match. The vibes around Celtic Park are back on the rise. And while it's true the gap at the top could have been bigger, especially with some frustrating late goals conceded recently like the ones at Dens Park, 4 wins on the bounce is nothing to scoff at. That kind of consistency is what titles are built on. The match against Hearts was crucial, not just for the points, but for the mood it helped restore. Coming off the back of that tough derby defeat, supporters needed a performance that felt like a statement. And to be fair, Hearts weren't coming in as pushovers. They've been in decent form and might have fancied causing a bit of chaos at Celtic. Park especially after watching how the derby unfolded. But Celtic responded in exactly the right way. The opening few minutes were a bit sluggish, 5 or 10 minutes of uncertainty maybe. But from there on out, it was a professional job. A 3-0 win, clean sheet, 3 goals scored. All of that, while missing key players through injury, is no small feat. The first choice keeper out. Key defenders also sidelined. Yet the team looked composed, assured, and in control. That's the kind of bounce back fans were desperate to see after the derby letdown. It wasn't just about getting a result, it was about setting a tone, and they did that brilliantly. One of the most promising signs was the way certain players bounced back individually. You could see it on the pitch, the body language, the confidence returning. Take the captain, for instance. Against the Rangers, he looked uncharacteristically shaky, but this time out, he seemed much more like his usual self. Calm, composed, communicating well with the backline. That kind of leadership has a ripple effect through the whole squad. When he's on it, the rest of the team feeds off it. Then there's a certain forward who really needed a game like that. Let's be honest, he'd been under pressure. Since that big derby clash, there had been a handful of performances that were well below his standard. People started asking questions, whether he still had a place in the squad long term, if maybe it was time for a move in the summer. Fans can be reactionary like that. One week they want someone out, the next they're singing their praises. But credit where it's due, his performance against Hearts was excellent. He grabbed an assist, could have had another if one chance had been converted, and looked far more like the player we know he can be. That version of him is someone you want in your side next season. I never quite bought into the idea that he needed to be sold. It always felt a bit premature. And if this is the kind of performance he can offer with a bit of rhythm and confidence, then he's absolutely worth sticking with. It was a refreshing reminder of his quality, and it wasn't just him. Across the pitch, you saw players stepping up, some who haven't been regular starters, others who've been returning from injury, and even a couple who've only recently been reintroduced to the squad. One lad in particular has now put in 2 solid back-to-back showings, integrating well and looking like a reliable option. That's what you want at this stage of the season. Not just stars shining, but squad depth coming good when needed. Now, that's not to say everything was flawless. There were still a few concerns, and some players have very limited time on the pitch, so it's hard to judge too much from that. One defender got just about 10 minutes, and the keeper had barely anything to do in terms of shots faced. But that's not a bad thing either. It shows the control the team had over the match. And speaking of goalkeepers, we've got to talk about the situation in goal. There's been a lot of uncertainty around the status of our starting shot stopper, and the manager's comments didn't do much to clear it up. After the match, he was asked about it and gave a fairly vague answer. Nothing too concrete, just that we don't really know how long the keeper will be out. It's a shoulder issue, and the sense is that further assessments are still to come, maybe through the national team or the club's own medical staff. But reading between the lines, it doesn't sound promising. Now, I'm not saying this with any inside scoop or exclusive info. But when a manager starts dodging specifics like that, it usually means the news isn't great. You develop an ear for this sort of thing. After hearing enough pressers, you know when they're softening the blow. My gut tells me his season might already be over. Not confirmed, not official, but that's the feeling based on the tone. There's a sliver of hope maybe that he could return if Celtic go deep into the Scottish Cup, like all the way to the final, but relying on that feels overly optimistic. It's not a scenario you want to be planning around. The manager's been pretty clear in recent weeks they're keeping things open-ended but not banking on it. What's made things even more interesting is the emergence of the young keeper who came in recently. There's been a lot of chatter online about him, people calling for him to get more minutes, asking why he's not being used more often. But the manager explained it well. From the start, the plan was always to let this young lad learn from one of the best to do it in the UK over the past decade, a guy who's won leagues, lifted cups, and has a wealth of experience. The idea was never to throw the kid in straight away, but to let him observe, develop, and grow alongside that experience. That's a sensible approach, even if it doesn't always satisfy the fans. People wanted to see the youngster play in the cup matches, but to win trophies, you've got to put out your strongest side. He did finally get a chance recently, and that was encouraging, but it doesn't change the bigger picture. With the main keeper potentially out, it's a nervous time, but also a moment of opportunity for the young lad if he's ready to step up. As for the current number 2, well, it seems like he's doing everything he can to show he deserves to stay. The coaching staff have praised his attitude and performances in training. And while he might not be first choice long term, he's making a solid case for himself. It's going to be interesting to see how that unfolds in the summer. Now, one more thing that stood out from the weekend was the buzz around another player. Someone who had been brought into the fold at a time when there were real doubts about his future at the club. After a bit of time on the sidelines, there were calls from fans saying he deserved more of a chance. But the manager made it clear that his role was always meant to be rotational there for depth and support. It wasn't about him being a regular starter. Still, the contributions he's made when called upon have been important, and the coaching staff seem pleased with his development. We'll get more into that in the left-back situation in the next part, because believe me, there's a lot to unpack when it comes to that position. Now, let's turn our attention to the situation at left-back. And this has been brewing for a while. There's been growing noise about one player in particular, and it's no real shock that he's likely heading for the exit. We've now had confirmation, or at least something close to it, that he's more likely to leave than stay. And honestly, it feels like the right move for all parties involved. You can tell things started shifting when the club brought in a new first-choice left-back. That alone was a clear signal. Add to that the arrival of another lad last summer, and suddenly the space in the squad for our outgoing player started shrinking rapidly. The writing's been on the wall for a bit. If he really wanted to stay, there were chances to show that. Opportunities to sign a new deal to speak up about his desire to be part of the long-term project. But none of that really happened. And when that's the case, you can't be surprised by the outcome. The manager said as much, really. A few months back, he talked about how the club had made a proposal and that the decision was now in the hands of the player. So when we hear now that he's probably leaving, it just feels like the natural progression of things. There's no bitterness in it either. He's been a steady servant, dependable more often than not, but the truth is he's just not quite at the level needed anymore. And with the new signing already showing his quality, there's no question the squad has been upgraded. If anything, there's a sense of appreciation, gratitude for what he's done even if the ceiling was never sky high. He came in, did a job, gave his best, and now it's time to move on. And for his own sake, it probably makes sense. If he still wants to be starting week in, week out, there'll be other clubs where he can do that. Here he was always going to be second choice at best, especially now. Of course, no official farewells just yet. That'll come in due course. But you can feel the tone shifting. The conversations are no longer about whether he'll stay, but when he'll go. And while we're losing a solid squad player, the team as a whole is moving forward. That's the cycle of football. Some players come to the end of their chapter, while others step up and take the reins. But this whole situation also casts a bit of a shadow over the other fullback slot. There's uncertainty there too, particularly around whether the current starter is here to stay. There's been a bit of talk, not confirmed, but enough whispers to raise eyebrows, that a permanent move in the summer isn't guaranteed. So even while one door is closing, we don't quite know what's happening with the other. The summer window might bring a bigger reshuffle in those positions than many were expecting. And that brings us to the final bit of reflection from the weekend. the tone of the update itself. This one was a bit rushed, I'll admit. Time's tight with things going on down here in London, but I didn't want to wait until I got back to share these thoughts. Sometimes it's best to speak while the feeling is fresh, and after a performance like that, with all the little storylines weaving together, it just felt like the right moment. Things will return to normal soon. I'll be back up north shortly, and with that, the usual schedule resumes. Live streams, Q&As, full match reactions, the lot. It'll be good to get back into rhythm, especially with no major breaks planned between now and June. Plenty still to cover, plenty still to fight for, and who knows what twist the rest of the season has in store. But for now, Celtic fans can breathe a bit easier. The title's not in the bag yet, but the team's moving like champions. Before we proceed, subscribe to our channel and enable notifications to receive all exclusive news about Celtic FC. Don't miss any details about your favorite team. It's extremely important for Celtic FC fans. A whirlwind of speculation is swirling around Harry Maguire's future as the towering defender is reportedly on the verge of a shock move to Scottish giant Celtic. The buzz intensified after a cryptic video surfaced on social media showing the scene. England international in what many believe could be a prelude to an imminent transfer. Fans and pundits alike are on edge, eagerly awaiting an official confirmation, with Celtic supporters already imagining how Maguire's imposing presence could fortify their defensive line. Maguire, who has experienced a roller coaster journey at Manchester United, has been a figure of controversy and brilliance in equal measure. After being stripped of the club captaincy in 2023, the centre-back appeared to face an uncertain future at Old Trafford. However, his recent resurgence, capped by impressive performances in the 2023-24 season, suggests that the player still has much to offer at the highest level. Despite not being the first choice for manager Erik ten Hag, Maguire's resilience has not gone unnoticed, and his form has attracted the attention of several clubs. Celtic's interest in Maguire comes at a crucial moment for the club, as they look to bolster their squad ahead of a critical season in both domestic and European competitions. The addition of a player with Maguire's pedigree could be a game changer for the Hoops, particularly in their bid to strengthen their defense and challenge for silverware. While the move could be seen as a step down from the Premier League, Celtic offers a fresh start in a league where Maguire's leadership could shine. The financial details of the potential deal remain unclear, but it is expected that Celtic would face stiff competition for Maguire's signature. With West Ham United and other clubs previously showing interest in securing the defender, it is evident that the 30-year-old still commands significant value in the transfer market. A move to Celtic, however, would likely appeal to Maguire as he seeks regular first-team football and the opportunity to become a focal point at a new club. As the transfer saga unfolds, fans are eagerly awaiting the next twist in this story. Could Harry Maguire soon be pulling on a Celtic shirt? The Scottish football world is on tenterhooks, waiting for the official announcement that could see the England defender make the move north of the border. Stay tuned as this transfer drama is far from over. Hello fan, don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel as it means a lot to Celtic FC. Also, share your opinion about the news in the comments below. See you in the next video.